stroll of the schizophrenic. It's a better model than the neurotic lying on the couch. A bit of fresh air, a relationship with the outside. Take the stroll of Lenz into the outdoors. It is different from moments when Lenz finds himself with his good pastor, who forces him to situate himself socially in relation to God, in relation to Father, in relation to Mother. On the contrary, he is in the mountains under the snow with other gods or without God at all, without family, without father or mother, with nature. What does my Father want? Can he give me better? Impossible! Leave me alone. Everything is a machine. And three celestial machines, the stars are rainbows, alpine machines, each coupled with those of his body, noise machine. Uninterrupted, idling to mutter. It must feeling of endless bliss to be in contact with the profound life profound to every form. To have a soul for the rocks, metals, water, and plants, to welcome into oneself, as in a dream, every element of nature, like flowers that breathe with the waxing and waning of the moon. Både det landskapet gir seg til where, både der de multidar til ned, innen det replies. Kromgas can be a chlorophyllin machine or a photosynthesis machine, or at least split his body as a part into such machines. Lenz put himself before the distinction of man nature, before all the identifications that this distinction conditions. He could not experience nature as nature, but as a process of production. There is no more man nor nature, only process that produces the one within the other and couples the machines together. Producing machine, desiring machine everywhere, schizophrenic machines, all generic life. Me and not me, exterior and interior don't mean anything anymore. That was me, Anti-Oedipus. That was me.
All right, hello everyone. Let me get the light turned on here and say hello. I hope everyone's well. Hope everyone's doing well. It's been a long, what a long week. What a long fucking week. The last 7 days have been absolutely insane politically, to say the least. We've gotten to see Operation Inflation become just a twinkle in the eye of Kid Not Kin, to all the way to Rachel Maddow shouting it out on her channel, and Andy No working to try to get me unalived. So hey, you know, pretty cool week, as far as I'm concerned. Pretty cool week. Been weird. But we are going to be doing what we call a philosophical reading and not actually doing a lot of sort of live politics today because I'm tired. I've been sick the last couple days and I'm super not in the mood. Just super not in the fucking mood to do much else. I don't think my brain can handle it right now anyway. So we are going to be working our way through a little bit of Anti-Oedipus. We are on page 365. Let's make our way over to that reading, if I can get that working. Looks like I can. Look at that. Seems to be about right. Where do I even start over what we've been doing the last week? The mic's crispy? Oh, really? Shit. Really? Motherfucker. Oping. Is it working? It seems to be working. It popped in really strong, but that should be a little bit better. We should be decent levels. It should be working a little bit better. Let me know if it's not YouTube. I thought I had this fixed. Really did. Hey, JK. Well, I'm coming through your mic, JK, by the way. All right. Where were we last week? Let me know if the crackling gets back to it. Very frustrating. Schizoanalysis is this last section. They're making their argument for a materialist psychiatry. This entire section, section 4, is focused on this. They go through this in a couple different ways. They go through the first destructive task and then the first and second positive task, constructive tasks. In this last bit, as they sort of work through how it functions, they're contrasting it very heavily against traditional psychoanalytic categories. Last week does feel like last month. Trust me. I feel you, planet. These traditional categories of the neurotic, the pervert, the psychotic, the paranoiac. These traditional categories, they're wanting to sort of take apart a little bit, play with a little bit, and make us sort of rethink a handful of how these things come to be and how these work. The way that they want us to really, really be spending time reconsidering at a big level is that people have conditions that go outward into society. Instead, they want us to be considering the outward societal realities constructing the social fabric, the bedding, the garden that grows these inside of it. It's a productive interaction, not one that comes from internal outwards, but instead the external space and how this sort of operates to define and build. And so the way Oedipus comes into this, even though the book is called Anti-Oedipus, they are going to spend a lot of time on it. They make the comments just to take a couple from the last two readings. Oedipus implies within the unconscious itself an entire reactionary paranoiac investment of the social field that acts as an Oedipalizing factor and that can fuel as well as counteract that pre-conscious investment. Oedipus, as they're arguing it, is actually not a natural structure. It's not something that sort of occurs a priori in man, but instead requires this Oedipalizing factor. It requires this thing to form. Ice 9 is the example I've used before, sort of how to talk about these things, the way that these things crystallize around it as soon as it's inserted, is a reactionary paranoiac investment of the social field that produces Oedipus as effect. Oedipus is not cause. And the place this operates is the unconscious itself. It is not ideology. It is not consciousness. It is the unconscious itself that these things come together.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
What the fuck? My TV just turned on and started yelling at me. One moment. Let me mute that. That's confusing. My son has learned how to hit that button that links YouTube. And so it's been doing this on occasion. And I got to tell you, it's my least favorite thing he's learned in a while. It scares the living shit out of me. As we talk about how consciousness comes to form, remember, there are two basic layers of this, and it's more complex than this, but they're simplifying and talking about the unconscious and preconscious. We have, on the one side, our preconscious investments or interests. These are things that we understand our class, our social position, how we understand ourselves socially at large. Then we have our unconscious investments. Our unconscious investments is a little bit more complicated to sort of deal with because they're not talking about large-scale symbols like you're invested in the idea of father or you're invested in the idea of mother, but instead you're invested in the structure. And the best way to talk about this is how Klosowski talks about the impulses of the will, desire, the forces, whatever it is, that sort of pulse into the structure of things and back out. And you gain a sense almost of the ways these things pump in and out. Think of it as all the electricity in a building going in, back out, in, back out. It's not that the electricity ever remembers, like, oh, this wire is there or anything, but that path of least resistance has been created. It's part and parcel of sort of the nature of how these things come together. And as that is done over and over, and that path of least resistance is found over and over and over, you have an investment in the structure that make that structure attractive. There's reasons that they use terms like flux and electrical and mechanical and all of these things to sort of talk through these things. Big reason. So now we're talking about Oedipus, and we've made our way beyond those sort of steps of it to understand how Oedipus has been produced, how Oedipus has been sort of run through, and how the way that desiring production and how it operates, just to sort of directly quote, the displacement of the limit of desiring production from its imminent position, desiring production imminently, to its internal limit within the socius, which is the social and family groups, creates a trap where familial repression doubles as social repression. These things come together. So the paranoiac's delirium originates in races, classes, ranks, universal history, all of these things, and is only secondarily actually applying to his familial unit. And as such, Oedipus presupposes an entire reactionary investment of the social field that acts as Oedipalizing factor. The presumption of that social field, that it is Oedipalized, creates Oedipus. It is a quasi-cause. It is it's a crystallization of things that sort of really work in a very particular way. It's the structure. It's ultimately the structures of things. So we're going to make our way into the next little bit here. I think that'll be probably fine, unless anyone has a really hardcore question or thing that they're wanting to sort of bring up. I'm here, and otherwise I'm just going to dive into this paragraph. Whew. It's a long intro. Apologies, I'm tired. I need to get my tea in me. Excellent. We'll make our way through then. I suppose that would be the next step. All right. One second. Let me make sure. I think Windows is doing that thing again where it mutes audio and limits automatically. It is excellent. All right, that should, see, it's doing it again. It's just, it automatically lowers the mic volume for the system when other things are happening, and I have it disabled. It doesn't care. Windows is the worst. So I'll just keep that open so I can just see when that's happening. Wonderful. Now to get to reading. Now, Oedipus appears to be a relatively innocent thing, a private kind of thing to be treated in an analyst's office. But we ask precisely what type of unconscious social investment Oedipus presupposes. Since psychoanalysis does not invent Oedipus, psychoanalysis is content to live off Oedipus, to develop and promote it, and to give it a marketable medical form. Inasmuch as the paranoiac investment enslaves desiring production, it is very important for it that the limit of this production be displaced, that it pass to the interior of the socius as a limit between two molar aggregates, the social aggregate of departure and the familial aggregate of arrival that supposedly corresponds to it. In such a way that desire is caught in the trap of a familial psychic repression that comes to double the weight of social repression. The paranoiac applies his delirium to the family, and to his own family, but it is first of all a delirium of races, ranks, classes, and universal history. In short, Oedipus implies, within the unconscious itself, an entire reactionary and paranoiac investment of the social field that acts as an Oedipalizing factor, that can fuel as well as counteract the preconscious investments. From the standpoint of schizoanalysis, the analysis of Oedipus therefore consists in tracing back from the son's confused feelings to the delirious ideas or the lines of investment of the parents, of their internalized representatives and their substitutes, not in order to attain the whole of a family, which is never more than a locus of application and reproduction, but in order to attain the social and political units of libidinal investment. With the result that all familialist psychoanalysis, with the psychoanalyst at the fore, warrants a schizoanalysis. Only one way to spend time on the couch. Schizoanalyze the psychoanalyst. I mean, this is going to be a line by line. It's going to be a line by line. This is reversing the general idea of psychoanalytic thought, whether it's Freud, Lacan, Reich, Klein, Zizek. It doesn't really matter. The way that people have always talked about Oedipus is that it's a private family thing, familial structure, that parents raise their child, and the child, how he deals with and is able to handle the arrogation, the law laid by the father or whatever, and then the mother being the demure. What they have words that everyone uses for this. that thing. It's presumed to be like the family's job to sort of Oedipize or create this proper triangulation for whether it's the children or for adults or whatever. And it's actually, as they're talking here and as they've been sort of laying out, it's actually a very specific type of unconscious libidinal investment of the social field. Very, very particularly. The paranoiac, which is the demand to know everything, the reactionary position, the reactionary investment, enslaves desiring production, and it does so to molar formations. Representation crushes desire in this formation. And this structure is not one that psychoanalysis invented, hardly. The way that the large-scale molar production crushed desire within the despotic, as they talked about in their Universal History, all of Chapter 3, that shit came before psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis didn't create this. Psychoanalysis had a clever name for it and is happy to exploit the structure and give it a medical or commercial, very much a way to sort of make cash off of its setup. But it existed prior. It's a very different type of thing than, it's psychoanalysis invented it, so we just get rid of psychoanalysis. No, psychoanalysis is playing into this structure. It is dealing with these things that are being enslaved, but it's doing so in a way that it's able to sort of attach itself almost parasitically to it. The sort of key thing in here to be talking about is the way that desiring production, as I talked about before, the desiring production moving from its imminent unconscious position, that of the BWO and prior, ultimately, to instead this social or familial aggregate, which is where we place it. This trap is created here. This is how it works. And so we have this entire reactionary field and this investment of the social field that becomes Oedipalizing. It's able to fuel counteracting political interests. So this is basically going after and starting to outline. I mean, it's clearly outlining the stuff they've been saying for kind of a little bit, that this is why people desire their own repression from the ground up. It's kind of, they're finally getting to the point. I mean, we're nearing the end of the book. Sorry. It's a lot inside kind of a tiny little bit here, to say the least. 2 seconds. We can go bit by bit. There's a little bit of interesting stuff. Yeah, there's a kind of interesting setup here. Bit by bit. Sorry, I'm a little out of it today. And now Oedipus appears to be a relatively innocent thing, a private kind of thing to be treated in the analyst's office. In the French, they have a slightly different wording for things. It's has the air of, because it's not so much that it appears to be. They're being very specific. Oedipus, we don't see it as outright this thing. It is sort of a psychological term. It is a psychoanalytic term, but it has this air of, this relatively innocent thing, has the air of that. It seems innocuous. It seems merely this sort of private psychological matter, right? That is confined to this clinical setting. It's, that's what they're laying out. This is how we see Oedipus. When people talk about, the Oedipus needs to be dealt with, or that we talk about the Oedipus, the Oedipus complex as a thing, or being Oedipalized, we tend to think of it as this analyst-analysand relationship, or something that's very, very private to a person. And again, as I sort of laid out, this paragraph is about upending that. It's actually quite opposite of that this innocence actually is concealing this sort of incredibly profound social political institution that is actually creating the very thing that they're saying is this private bit, right? So psychoanalysis, as they've talked about, privatizes what is fundamentally social. They've talked about it a lot, and here it is, the sort of the main tree, the main fruit of psychoanalysis, this Oedipal situation and castration and all that follows on from it. They're being very clear. This is actually all what is happening inside of psychoanalysis. This is where Deleuze and Foucault, I think, share a lot, to be perfectly frank. This is a Madison civilization. Foucault goes into, in depth, the way that we've privatized mental health madness and all of that. We've turned it into this private thing, despite it being a very social production. And that's what AO is about, is explaining how it is a social production, how it comes about. Because that's their question. They say, but we ask precisely, what type of unconscious social investment Oedipus presupposes? Since psychoanalysis does not invent Oedipus, psychoanalysis is content to live off of Oedipus, to develop, to promote it, to give it a marketable medical form. And they have the phrasing around this is, I think, really important, because they're not asking if Oedipus exists. It's one of the things to remember about a lot of secondary readings about this, They're not wanting to throw out all of psychoanalytic thought. That's not the thing that Guattari wants to do at all. It's not the thing that Deleuze wants to do. They're wanting to give a new place for it to begin working from, to reconfigure it so it has a better understanding of the innate nature of desire, impulses, forces, wording you want to sort of use. That's the thing here. It's about not if Oedipus exists, but what social investment Oedipus presupposes. And the word investment is a Freudian term they're using here. This is like cathexis. This is the social cathexis, the social investment, libidinal energy that is directed at large objects. They're very much using psychoanalytic terms throughout this. This is not tossing out the baby with the bathwater. It's instead saying that, hey, psychoanalysis actually lives off Oedipus. It feeds off Oedipus. It is, as I said, like parasitic in this sense. It didn't invent it. Oedipus is a social byproduct or product itself that psychoanalysis is exploiting to develop this medical form, as this sentence says. The whole point here is to sort of lay that out. This is what psychoanalysis is doing. Then they say, inasmuch as the paranoiac investment enslaves desiring production, it is very important for it that the limit of this production be displaced, that it pass to the interior of the socius as a limit between two molar aggregates, the social aggregate of departure, the familial subaggregate of arrival, that supposedly corresponds to it, in such a way that desire is caught in the trap of a familial psychic repression that comes to double the weight of social repression. God damn, it's a long paragraph. Long paragraph. In this big sentence, the thing that matters is that paranoiac investment refers to this first pole of libidinal social investment, right? This is the reactionary pole that subordinates the molecular desiring production to molar large-scale formations. Desire is emergent. Molar is not emergent. It is a determinate structure. It is set up socially, and desire is emergent. If it subordinates to that, that's the reactionary paranoiac pole, right? And when this happens, this is the setup. This thing that's being played here is a little bit different. No text on stream. Am I not sharing the text on the stream? I'm not sharing it in the room. That's my fault.
No, bro, we're like second-class citizens here on Discord now.
I forgot, you dick. I just forgot. No one said anything for like literally 25 minutes. You fucking people. Seems I'm crushing you. Is that better? All right, good. You're less oppressed. I do what I can. We are in we're literally in the middle of the paragraph because we're making our way into this sort of, sorry, I literally was like incredibly sick yesterday, so I'm still recovering a little bit, but I thought better to do this than skip it. The line, the familial subaggregate, the social aggregate, the setup here is this displacement of limit that is happening. Desiring production has an imminent limit, right? The BWO is the limit to desiring production. It's the end of that. Desiring production doesn't go really beyond that setup. The paranoiac investment moves this to inside the socius. And you have this really odd, the social sphere of things. And so you have this really odd false boundary that gets created in the setup between the social and the familial, that the social is at large and the family is really where you're made. And then you have you as an individual, then that's kind of it. Beyond you, they have an ego, superego, id, or some odd chain of symbol bullshit. Whatever it is, it's not within you. And it's also not external to the family. There's this really weird sort of setup that's created inside of traditional psychoanalysis. And that illusion that's created, they call it as such, is this. It's a thing where we start talking about how desire originates in and is contained in the family. The family, as it's triangulated, is where we form our desires. It's how desire lives. It's how we invest the social field. It's within the family, within the family, within the family. And so the familial repression, familial representation, also becomes social repression as it's doubling up. The family at no point, and this is kind of it's the next paragraph is going to really get into this, but one of the big pushes as they're making their way through this is to understand how desire is caught. And when they say caught, where it's utilized and sort of recrushed. And the familial repression, which also doubles as social repression, is kind of a really weird play that happens here. The family itself at no point is like repressing or replacing social repression. Instead, it is intensifying it through a second internalized mechanism. So psychoanalysis, by treating Oedipus as familial, serves social repression. That would be really what the point of this is. And I can go through the rest of this as we sort of talk through what they talk about. The paranoiac applies his delirium to the family, his own family, but is first of all a delirium of races, ranks, classes, and universal history. But this is just continuing that. This is, again, traditional psychoanalytic causality being reversed. The paranoiac doesn't project familial conflicts on society. No, instead, paranoiac delirium originates in those social formations and only secondarily applies to the family. Again, they're shifting all of this. They're shifting all of these things to sort of recenter them as a place where they belong, where the paranoiac position sits, where the reactionary position, the Oedipalized position, the ice nine that all of this crystallizes around and is sort of ready to go. And that's kind of the line that they say. In short, Oedipus implies within the unconscious itself an entire reactionary and paranoiac investment of the social field that acts as an Oedipalizing factor and that can fuel as well as counteract preconscious investments. And that's how do these things interact and how do they interplay? Why does one's social investments that they've got, their investments, how does it overrule where they understand their position to be? How does it overrule, how do poor immigrants who come to America, who barely get citizenship, vote for Trump and say that they need to get rid of other illegals? How do conservative black families vote for Trump? How does anyone, to be perfectly frank, but like, I understand rich people, like there's some that make sense, but it's because what's happening, that's what they're laying out here. The unconscious self, an entire reactionary investment of the social field that acts as an Oedipalizing factor, that fuels and counteracts preconscious investments. Oedipus is not, again, natural. It is this Oedipalizing factor. It is this reactionary paranoiac investment that exists socially, in the social field. That produces Oedipus as effect. This operates in the unconscious itself. This is not ideology. This is not consciousness. This is the direct investment of the thing. And as such, you have this thing that overrules revolutionary preconscious investments. Your interests, your class interests, whatever it may be, are undermined by reactionary unconscious investments directly. Reactionary preconscious investments can be strengthened as well. These things interact at this level, unconsciously, preconsciously, but they're happening because of our investments socially. That's the big thrust of basically this entire paragraph, is the presupposition of this entire social field, right, is the sort of thing that's worth taking a note at. This is the Oedipalizing factor. It fuels or counteracts preconscious political interests as a thing. So it's for us as schizoanalysts, or for us as readers of the book, it's to not just stop there. It's, again, to be able to make our way back all the way, not to family. That's not it. But through parents' delirious ideas, what the parents believed, what the parents saw, what the parents were invested in, how they dealt with things and dealt with it. All familialism warrants schizoanalytic critique. They're not saying parents don't matter. I've seen that take too many times. They're just saying it's not in the sense of, oh, you have a triangulation of how you treat your father is how you treat all of this, and it's the symbolic sort of restructuring of everything. No, but your parents literally did everything around you and you saw the world through them. It'd be silly to say otherwise. All of it is worth critiquing. And that includes, at the end, their final line here. Even the psychoanalyst warrants schizoanalysis. It warrants critique. It warrants schizoanalyzing across the entire thing. The entire setup is their push. All of it warrants it. There's no part that isn't part of this entire thing.
And they say to us like why we critique Jordan Peterson. He's a certified psychologist. He's an expert, quote expert, put and cap expert. Like,
yeah, that's fair. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot of jargon. It'll make more sense as we make our way into the next couple paragraphs. I know it's a lot, trust me. The next couple of paragraphs, I think, are a little bit easier, and they start giving sort of a grounding of this, because when we start talking about like what they're doing, and they go through the theses of schizoanalysis, which is this last bit, they go through the tasks and then the theses, and all of these are sort of a systemic logic to sort of read things through or see things through or to work through. And we're about to get through the fourth. These things start making a little bit more sense as you kind of make your way.
So could you say that the psychoanalyst embodies the Oedipal as well, and promotes the Oedipal, by way of psychoanalyzing his patients?
Yes.
Patients come in with these Oedipal conflicts, and then the psychoanalyst just continues to encourage it and work with that Oedipal complex to resolve his neurosis or psychosis. But it is to just kind of promote the same, social structures that were there in the first place.
Yeah. I think that's fair. The psychoanalyst, so if we think of, there's this, so let's say, and I'm going to speak a little loosely about it. This is not direct language. I apologize, just in general, because it's going to be a little bit looser than I want. Out in the social space, there's a lot of different sort of things for people to attach to, and a lot of representations for things to work through. The way that psychoanalysis works is it attaches to Oedipus. Oedipus is one of those that's out there, and it brings it in, and then again assigns it to the individual to get in place with their setup, with their family, and that familialist tone, the idea of a family being this whole that one can attain, or that you can have a perfect family, or that family itself is not just sort of an odd contingent configuration of things. That's kind of the deal that they're sort of saying, hey, that's out there. And as such, there's this weird crystallization that happens around that representation that creates all of this. Coin of Swords says, that's my experience. It's dangerous because psychoanalysis is so prevalent in pop psychology. People treat the construct like the real thing because it describes something they think they know what they're talking about. And it becomes this, again, not even as a tool to learn about it. And you'll see this in some good writing, actually, about Lacan and other things, where they're very clear, and I would argue Lacan is clear in his later years, that he doesn't mean quite literally. And that he doesn't mean any of it quite literally, that he is speaking in a sort of odd meta way, and there's a commentary invested in the way that he's speaking. you won't see that in a lot of people who talk about this stuff commonly now, because it's one of those things like even Freud didn't really buy, frankly. Like there's a lot of really interesting writings around Freud and the Oedipal complex and all these people who came up with it. But the thing is, it is in service of, it is, Rudd says, I like the language that promotes the Oedipal. I think it's really strong too, as it reflects the way psychoanalysis tracks everything back to the subconscious that aligns more with the framework of psychoanalysis than the person on the couch. Yes, that's basically their argument. That is really well put. It's basically their argument. Yeah. Guattari asks, is Operation Inflation complete? No. Guattari, you're very annoying. People can do two things, my dude. Very annoying.
How that is connected to the paranoid or the disinterested love in the molar machine, I guess, or molar, like.
Say again.
How is that, like, connected to the disinterested love, right? It's kind of like the first kind of formulation before, like the episode before, like we read about the first formulations, right? The narcotic, the psychotic, and these kind of things. How is it connected to the disinterested love, like the paranoid kind of machine, right? Or to have different positions, I guess, in terms of like the paranoid applies his delirium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that like this molar, like, molar machine, like, is that kind of like a disinterested love, right? Because he mentioned, a word, like he mentioned it's kind of like the reactionary kind of like had this disinterested love in this kind of molar aggregate, right? Or how can it connect to the familiar or relations, I guess?
I'm going to have to think for a second. That's actually more complex than my brain's ready to go, I think. But give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. Because that's where we start talking about like agape, where we were talking before and where we got stun-locked on the use of that word and how it kind of got shifted over. And that's, it's not a place I'm necessarily going to be strong at because it's a entirely new line of reasoning and thought. So give me just a minute.
Yeah. Take your time, Brooks. Like, we all learn. We all learn here.
Yeah, it's So I actually want to kind of go to the next paragraph because we're going to be starting talking about the indices. It's one of the things that's very tough, and I really like about the way that they talk about what all of this is they use a lot of terminology that you don't usually see when you're talking about people's thoughts or dreams or wishes or anything. And when we start talking about the way that when we start talking about the indices of things, the disinterested investment that is revolutionary disinterested investment versus reactionary disinterested investment, which is Oedipal loves versus non-figurative loves. The way that I tend to understand sort of these as things is the Oedipalized or the representational, the figurative, is you love persons as objects. This results in things like in traditional psychoanalysis, the Madonna whore complex, where men don't really see a woman as a complex person, but instead see her as either the virgin or the whore. And that object is kind of where their loves are at. It divides people into simulacra, into codes, and it's that through loving the person, you're loving the code. is generally how the Oedipal sort of love of things comes out. It's this is explicitly a blocking, canceling, flattening, crushing version of these things, to say the least, for sure. But when you start talking instead about this sort of non-figurative love, which is revolutionary disinterested investment, this is not really mediated by the person form. It's loves that are beyond that a little bit. They are directly invested in the flux. They're directly invested in the singular points of things. They've used that term in there. And so if we're talking about, they use the phrase, a sort of art for art's sake in the libido. And I think this is where I would probably end up starting to talk about it. I know I brought up the officer in the penal colony because, again, he was the reactionary version of this. It's his libidinal investment was the machine, but it was like the machine as idea, the machine as concept, not its technicalities, but its social position, where it was, what it did, and how it was supposed to work. The officer loves this torture machine with this disinterested passion. It wasn't really for personal gain. He didn't have it. It wasn't there because it made him a better person. He didn't love it for that, but the machine itself. And that reactionary side of things is this disinterested love. Revolutionary disinterested love is structurally very much similar, and it sounds almost identical. It's disinterested, it's passionate, it has direct investment, but it's investing in a different pole. We're about to get to it. I'm kind of skipping ahead because it's literally the next paragraph where we start talking about the two poles, the reactionary and revolutionary poles of investment. But because the structure is the same, it sounds identical when we talk about this, but the revolutionary pole is investing quite differently. It's not into the repressive representation, but instead the decoded flux of it. It's not about the subjugated groups, it's about the subject groups. It's not about blocking flows, but circulating the schiz. The way that they talk about these things, the disinterested love is that larger scale social thing that sort of exists that isn't directly tied to anything. An interested love is one that sort of plays a little bit differently, but they're talking about this disinterested thing, the art for art's sake, doing a thing for its own sake, sex for sex's sake, all of that. And the whole point is sort of that these disinterested loves, right? These non-figurative loves are never about what's in it for me. You don't say that. That's why it's disinterested. You do not receive profits from it. You do not. It's an economic term. It's you have no interest in it. You have no share. It's not going to pay dividends to you. It's the thing in itself, the act in itself, the stuff in itself, and it's not calculating. It's not mediating things through representations. It isn't utilitarian. It's disinterestedly investing the flux, right?
So, for example, like in political practice, I know that it's a political book, right? But in political practice, like I am from Libya, right? I want to invest in American working class because I think that the conservatives are philosophically bankrupt, right? I want to kind of like, I don't receive any profit from the American people, right? But I want like a leftist government in the United States. Like
but you have interest in that. You're now talking about, this is figurative. All of this is figurative.
Yeah.
So this is interested. If you're going to say otherwise, like I would disagree with you. Like obviously having a more leftist government in the U.S. would probably be pretty good for a lot of people in the Middle East, just in general, not necessarily Zionists, but a lot, or the wealthy, like the technocrats.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is like an interest there. There's an understanding there. This is different. This is non-figurative. This is disinterested. This is sexuality of desire machines directly investing the social field without any figure without a person object, without an image, without Oedipal coding. These are the indices of revolutionary investment, because what they reveal is desire's disinterested passion for the decoded flux. It is the things people can't help do. So let's talk about Operation Inflation, my project with Kid, that thing we're doing. I think it's actually a fantastic example of this. We didn't know, like, there isn't a goal with it. It's not going, when people see it, their immediate reaction is cutting past any signs, symbols, understanding of things. It kind of just shifts the discussion. Now, it's going to become coded and become another thing, but the underlying thing we're talking about here is not, oh, it does that, it makes fun of ICE. It really doesn't. It actually has, I can name a whole bunch of reasons this is actually better for ICE and better for the police. Like, I can actually name good, interested reasons if I want to. That's the challenge with interest is, one, you start with that and you work backwards. But when you're in this place of this non-figurative revolutionary energy, you're not invested in the symbolism of a thing, the way that it's set up. Instead, it's just the thing itself. Sexuality is directly investing in the social field. And it's, again, sex is everything, is non-human sex we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It's non-human.
Yeah.
And so you can have the reactionary side of things where you love machinery, the repressive machines. I can name people that do this, whether it's, I'm on the side of Antifa and they're fine, or I'm on the side of ICE. Yeah, you're kind of doing that. You're invested in the machines. It's reactionary. You enjoy being a cog in some larger thing. And I get this. This setup is the reactionary side. The revolutionary side is the enjoyment of the decoded, the deterritorialized, the process, not the end result. So non-figurative or figurative is kind of the two. Representational or non-representational is going to be the things. And as they sort of push into this, and they're going to be doing it, that's absolutely true, Ben. And it's also a great scene. But that thing that's happening there that's really important is that break in the libido. Because when we talk about, and they talk about abstract painting with Kandinsky, Klee, they go into Pollock, for example. There's no figural representation in there. It is a formal operation of things because it sort of abandons personal objects, triangulation, representation, interest, any of those things. This is the shift to the revolutionary. Now, again, this isn't me saying, here's what you do, and then now you're a revolutionary. It's the opposite. This is saying, hey, understand, you're produced, we're all produced. And there's a couple bits of us, and all of these forces that make us up go through these things. And they go through our unconscious, they are produced in our unconscious, and then go through this sort of preconscious class interest, and then kind of out into the social world. And the social world is also, by the way, producing those things and then falling back on us. We are a conduit of indices for these things. And so as such, when we're talking about love for love's sake, or we're talking about the non-figurative love, or desire being agape, for example, this type of love, this type of desire, this type of attachment is one that bypasses the visual. And again, this is why you have reactionaries who, in all stances, seem to be the thing that they are very upset about. They used to scream and be angry about FEMA and having gun lists of the government collecting names of everyone on guns. It was because their investments, ostensibly, you can just take them at their word. They weren't lying. They just were invested differently. Their investment was, I don't want to be on a list that a black man puts together, because that's what Obama was doing. And there's a lot of other things that sort of go into it. It's not even black man. It's all of the emotions and all the setup and all the things that they're seeing. No. And then sort of now, yeah. And that is kind of the thing. It's why, again, the officer from the penal colony from Kafka is the example they use so much. He had this intense libidinal investment of a machine that wasn't just a technical machine. It was a technical machine, absolutely. But it was a social machine, absolutely. And you could see sort of in him how desire desires its own repression. He loves this machine with this disinterested passion. It wasn't for personal gain. Certainly, he threw himself into it. He was about to be executed. What does he get out of it? Nothing. He gets to be part of it. He gets to be a cog in it. He gets to work. He gets to be fit somewhere. And that is itself the enjoyment of the paranoiac, is when everything fits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense within the social kind of investment. There's a people have like different social investments, and I understand what he mean. But your point about the emergence of desire. Desire is emergent, right?
It's emergent for everyone.
And you have it's emergent for everyone, right? And the pre-conscious and the unconscious, right? These simultaneously, they are kind of overlap with each other in the paranoid reactionary. Like they kind of, sometimes you have the pre-conscious kind of investment that is reactionary and paranoid. But how can we notice that? Or this naive question, but how can we notice that? How can we kind of realize, early that kind of we are in a situation or end up in a situation where we kind of have this paranoid reactionary investment? Or familiar kind of.
Well,
yeah.
This is the thing. You wouldn't, because you are it. This is why it's kind of, there's a big push for Guattari and for Deleuze into this direction of group therapy and group sort of socialization and psychoanalytic consulting, that it's away from the one-to-one, away from the familial, away from this closed off. There's a reason that they're making this thing over and over. You won't know. And by the way, it's also not that you should join a group who will tell you properly and then you can all take the punch together. It's not that either. But it's understanding the process of all of this, because you're going to do it too. You don't know it. And a lot of, especially younger people, you don't know it until you get to the point where actually push comes to shove and it ends up that you actually have a reactionary investment. And it comes through based on how you react to a thing or what you do or any of that. And you may, things show up and you don't know what you've got until you've got it. I guess, which sounds stupid as I say it out loud, but that's what you get on a Tuesday.
It's not stupid. It's not stupid. No, it's not stupid. Like, I understand what you mean. Like sometimes we are like, sometimes on the left we are kind of paranoid reactionary. Sometimes
more than sometimes
we have. Yeah, sometimes we do that. We say the truth. Like this is a good philosophical discussion. Like, we say the truth, right? Like, sometimes we do that, right? I do that, right?
It's actually there's a discussion I had it's a long time ago now on the Fold, where Sunday and I were disagreeing on how politics should work. And I just said, just do something. It doesn't even matter. Just do a thing and it changes stuff. I'd like to think I've proven my thesis at this point. But there's a reason that people get attached to this idea of, like, specifically, well, what should we do? What's the goal? What's it going to do in the long run? And then the paranoiac enjoyment of, and again, it's enjoyment should be specific. It's, when I say that, I mean like paranoiac sens. I'm talking about like the Lacanian way of the satisfaction at a profound level of fitting into the way the social world works and figuring out how to push things in the right directions, versus the, I don't know, let's do a thing, which is how things actually tend to actually be changed. That enjoyment blocks many of us from doing anything. Oh, I shouldn't do that. I'm scared of this. What if this happens? What about this? And all of these parts that we can build for ourselves retroactively to define why we shouldn't do these things.
For example, the enjoyment of some political pundit that yada yada yada. I wouldn't complete the sentence.
Yeah.
A enjoyment of, yeah.
So, John, in case I understand there's a subtle difference. Wasn't Operation Inflation goal-oriented from the start to make them look silly? Yes, but I didn't start it, and neither did Kid. Like, the whole point is some dude in a frog outfit and a guy in a chicken outfit kind of started it. And they didn't have a goal, not really. They at the first day they were interviewed, they're like, I don't know, it's just they started it. What did they do it for? What was the goal? They didn't really have one, but as it gets going and as you connect to it and again, our goal was just to have more. And as we were going, it felt right. It felt right. Was the goal to make ICE look silly? I don't know if it makes them look silly. Definitely makes Trump look silly, but is that the goal? It really kind of wasn't. There was like a lot of different things as we were talking through it. It's a million things. But again, it's easy to go, well, also here's the reasons not to. Here's the reasons not to. And you're, no, Queen, I don't think it means we shouldn't do things because they're goal-oriented. It's kind of goofy to me, but someone's doing it, so fine. There's a difference between, and again, they're going to be getting into this, but goal-oriented behavior depends on what you mean by goal-oriented. When we talk, and not to go at like the extreme level, but I'm just going to go right there because that's what this book is about. Why did the Bolshevik Revolution turn into Stalinism? Which I don't care if anyone here wants to argue it. One of the great tragedies of the 20th century. Communism is one of the great tragedies of the 20th century, up there with Nazism. Different setups, murdered a whole bunch of people, ruined a whole lot of lives. Why? Because it started in a place of revolution and communism and the right things and caring about the workers. And then, well, it's because the investment in the party apparatus. And then what does that mean? Well, the setup and the goal became the thing that hardened, that people had to attach to, and they weren't willing to let it die. And that thing at that large setup, that's the big deal we're talking about. When we talk about goal, like, yeah, have a goal for the day, have a goal for the week. Like I'm okay with this. I'm not sure that they would say that you're being unethical by having any semblance of goals. But when you're like, oh no, we're going to overthrow the US government and install a state-based centralized form. It's like, okay, that's wow. Like that kind of shit's a very different beast. That's a very different beast of a goal. So it's, again, there is nuance in what goal means. There is all of this, but the thing underneath it, for me, that matters is this difference between the reactionary or revolutionary love. And as such, I'm going to demand we move to the next paragraph. So I'm going to do that. Unless anyone has a last minute question on this little bit here. I know, JK, you were going to come in. Did you have anything else, or was that you're good?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks.
All right. I mean, we live in a time. So if you didn't know, like this afternoon, like, I think it was 2 hours ago, Trump said that America was going to stop buying Chinese cooking oil. Did you see this? And the stock market lost $450 billion in 7 minutes. This is where we live. That's not a small amount of money. That's not a small amount of money. And that's insane. But this is kind of the world we live in now. And so when you start talking about goals and things, how these things work, how people have their individuals and how they're coming back up and what that means, it's yeah. It is, yes, Rudd, it is very much Peacemaker from the show. I will achieve peace. I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to kill to get it. It's very much that kind of thing. Thank you. Greek name that I wish I could pronounce. Logos. Of course it's Logos. Are you Logos? You're not. You're not Logos, though. There is a Logos. Oh. Well, you're much more pleasant here than I thought. But it's the Trump threatening cooking oil losing $500 billion in fucking value of the stock market. This is one of the worlds we live in. Like, this is just sorry. These things are crazy every single day. And that one is a lot. It's a lot. But we'll continue to the next paragraph because that's kind of, I'm jumping way ahead. And so was Marcellus with the question. Oh, it's not origin of logos. Okay, good. It's another logos. I'll take that logos. Much more pleasant logos. I'll continue. We have maintained throughout that by dint of their difference in nature with regard to the preconscious investments of interest, the unconscious investments of desire had sexuality as an index in their social scope itself. Okay, I'm going to stop because as I'm going through, I'm going to end up repeating these words a lot. And so it's important you have in your head as we go the right view of them. Preconscious investments of interest, or how you apperceive your position socially. Do you actively, maybe, it's not consciously, it's not intellectualizing, if I think about it, it's how do you immediately perceive your social connection to the world? And this is really complicated, and it really is upsetting to people to talk about, but there is a reason that there are trans women who still see themselves preconsciously as men or masculine socially or connected in that way because you're traced throughout the world in the way you are throughout your life. There are men who see themselves as second-class citizens. There are white people who don't see themselves as white. There are people who see themselves as off-white. There are black people who see themselves where you see yourself. It is not a universal objective measure. This is your preconscious interest. Off-white is a thing, LJ. It's not a joke. That's a fucking thing we can talk about another time. I don't mean eggshell. That's like, eggshell's more for business cards and like pinning your kitchen when you've got a nice bay window. I'm not talking about eggshell. Okay. I'm talking about more of that's not what I'm talking about. People, there's a lot of fun conversations about race, but my point is it's the way you apperceive almost secondarily bodily your understanding socially, where you exist and where your interests are. Is it in your interest emotionally, immediately? Right? Is it more interest? Is Trump your interest? Is unions in your interest? If you don't feel that, it's not. You can intellectualize it and understand it. But again, this is your preconscious, not how you consciously understand yourself, preconscious interests. And this vibe, it's very vibey, is sort of combined with the second bit, the unconscious investments of desire. The unconscious investments of desire is that impulsing in and out, creating desire pathways into the world back and forth that you get used to. Right? That's the thing. So one is the impulses that you exist within that sort of make you up. They pulse out into the world and back and infinitely fast, incredibly fast. And then as they're sort of synthesized or as they're going through the three syntheses, you end up with a sort of preconscious understanding of where you exist socially. Are you married? Are you single? Are you in a polyamorous relationship? Do you have parents who are care about you or don't, or friends or social circles? All of these things. These are the two steps before we even talk about how you consciously or cognitively explain or talk about yourself. This is just important. So I'm just going to leave it there. It's a semi-gloss racial category. Off-white is one of more fascinating things. There's a lot of race is very interesting as like a conceived of concept. And especially when you start getting into circles where people are starting to figure out how to play with it and how to talk about it differently, just like with sexuality, it's really interesting. But I'll continue. Okay. We have maintained throughout that by dint of their difference in nature with regard to the preconscious investments of interest, the unconscious investments of desire has sexuality as an index in their social scope itself. Which does not mean, of course, that one need only invest the poor woman, the maid, or the whore to have revolutionary loves. There are no revolutionary or reactionary loves, which is to say that loves are not defined by their objects any more than by the sources and aims of the desires and drives. But there are forms of love that are the indices of the reactionary or revolutionary character of the investment made by the libido of a socio-historical or geographic field, from which the loved and desired beings receive their definition. Oedipus is one of these forms, and the index of a reactionary investment. And the well-defined figures, the well-defined roles, the clearly distinct persons, in short, the image models of which Lawrence spoke, mother, fiancée, mistress, wife, saint, or whore, princess, maid, rich woman, poor woman, are dependents of Oedipus, even in their reversals and their substitutions. The very form of these images, their configurations, and the whole of their possible relations are the product of a code, or of a social axiomatic to which the libido addresses itself through them. Persons are simulacra derived from a social aggregate whose code is unconsciously invested for itself. Such a good line. Such a good line. That is why love and desire exhibit reactionary, or else revolutionary, indices. The latter emerge, on the contrary, as non-figurative indices, where persons give way to decoded fluxes of desire, to lines of vibration, and where the cross-sections of images give way to schizzes that constitute singular points, signs, with several dimensions, causing flux to circulate rather than canceling them. Non-figurative loves, indices of a revolutionary investment of the social field, and which are neither Oedipal nor pre-Oedipal, since it all amounts to the same thing, but innocently an-Oedipal, and which give the revolutionary the right to say, Oedipus? Never heard of it, undoing the forms of persons and the ego, not in behalf of the pre-Oedipal undifferentiated, but on behalf of an-Oedipal lines of singularities, the desiring machines. For there is indeed a sexual revolution which does not concern objects, aims, or sources, but only machinic forms or indices. I dig it. I think it's great. It's maybe not for everyone, but hey. You can see why I went back through and I made that point to sort of stop and say, hey, we're going to take a break. Because when we're talking about indices, when we're talking about how these elements come together, we are doing, for lack of a better term, calculus of the soul almost. That's what they're playing with here, is these terms of calculus, the way that the indices of these elements come together, how they play, where we find our point signs, our singulars, our elements. This is the thing, right? This is the thing. So I guess line by line is the thing to do here. Anyone have a comment before I start diving in? The Queen of Swords knows exactly where I was going with it. The Irish aren't considered whites. Neither are the Italians, depending on the Italians, and also Germans, which is, if you think about it, really kind of hilarious in its own weird way. It depends on where you're talking and who you're talking to. But humanity's fascinating. So let's go back to the other bit here, and we'll just make our way through bit by bit. So, we have maintained throughout that by dint of their difference in nature with regard to the preconscious investment of interest, the unconscious investments of desire had sexuality as an index in their social scope itself. The unconscious investment of desire is different in nature. All of those in unconscious investments of desire are different in nature from preconscious investments of interest. This is not degree. This is not, this is really important to grab and to be aware of. Fire has a lot of things about it. Temperature, brightness, these things. These are different in nature. Fire produces light and heat. These are not the same by degree. They're different in nature. As such, these are different in nature. The difference is, as they say, sexuality as an index in the social scope itself. Sexuality functions as an indicator, as the way to find the indices, the measuring device. They've talked about this measuring device we can use. They have a lot of names for it I don't like using. But that's the thing they're pushing here, is that like how desire invests the social field directly, not derivatively. The derivative investments, that's not the indicator. It's the direct is right there. And that's the crucial thing, is that the index, the indices, the index in the social scope itself. Sexuality is not the content. It is the indice, which reveals the type of investment. The libido, as it functions, invests in social formations, but sexuality reveals which formations and how. That's not human sexuality, it's non-human sexuality. They go on to explain this, don't worry. Go for it.
We read before that, 30 chapters before. We read about the metamorphosis, right? The metamorphosis, or like the non-human and these kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are beyond the non-human, like this metamorphosis. I don't remember like which page, but I kind of like understand like where it's going, right? But there's a question after that. After you read the line, there's a question beforehand, like fourth, like after you read like the second page. So I will ask you afterward. Sorry.
No, you're good. They go right into explaining this. Read indices are like markers from which to trace genealogy of desires. Think of indices as, I don't know how it's indexicals. It's you have a whole bunch of notes and it's a whole bunch of velocities that you're graphing. They're all indices. They're not, vector of movement doesn't actually exist. They're indices of stuff. And this is the thing that they're talking. They're actually using terminology directly like that for a reason. And they go right into it. Give me two more sentences, Reed, and then tell me again if you don't quite follow, because I think they actually explain it nicely with a little bit of maybe some helping. This does not mean that one need only invest the poor woman, the maid, or the whore to have revolutionary loves. Up front, they're just like, because that's a running thing that, he clearly doesn't care about class, and it's revolutionary. No. They want us to get beyond that sort of thing where we talk about the object, because the object that you love isn't the deal. They're going to be saying that very clearly here, but it's like they want to avoid this vulgar materialism, which they often get accused of hilariously, where you choose lower class objects naturally means that you have a revolutionary desire because you're opposing your own class position. My God, but it's like, no, this is not the setup. They're mocking Freud specifically here because that's the poor woman, the maid, and the whore are like basically I want to say almost every case Freud went into, he made it about class position inside of his things. Maids are always part of everything. Wolfman and, I want to say Ratman too, like always. The theory of maids in Freud is its own sort of amazing thing. But the whole point is that simply investing in marginalized figures doesn't mean you actually are made of revolutionary desire or that there's revolutionary desire there at all. Object choice determines nothing. The form of the investment, how desire relates to the coded flux or decoded flux. Is a little bit more. And that's why they say there are no revolutionary or reactionary loves, which is to say that loves are not defined by their objects any more than by the sources and aims of the desires and drives. Freudian systems, Lacanian too, honestly, are very object related or symbol related with drive and forces. Freud does this everywhere. The entire thing, they're throwing out all of that. This is basically them saying, fuck off. There's none of that. There's neither object or source nor aim. The satisfaction. Aim is like what satisfies the thing. None of that determines whether love is revolutionary or reactionary. Entirely. They're just saying no. So stop. So they say, but there are forms of love that are the indices of the reactionary or the revolutionary character of the investment made by the libido of a socio-historical or geographic field from which the loved and desired beings receive their definition. So that this is, it kind of requires the entire book to kind of get this, because they are way flipping everything on its head, and they've done all the work to get here, so I'm not going to be repeating the work to get here. But the thing is that loved beings don't pre-exist the libidinal investment. They receive their definition from the field in which you are invested. You do not love someone who exists independently. You do not love a person in a vacuum. The person as object is constituted by the type of social field your libido is invested in. The maid isn't already the maid whom you love. She becomes maid through how your desire is invested by class relations, service relations, colonial relations, and other things. Step 1. 2, the other reversal. They do a lot of this, but these, again, I'm not going to back that up. You can read the rest of the fucking book. Because that's what this book is about, is explaining that. And so now they're finally just saying it. The second thing is that forms of love, not objects or sources or aims, are indices. This is hopefully what makes sense to you. These indices form an index of how libido is invested in a social or historical or geological field. Capitalism, despotism, a colonial space, an empirical space, a desert island, whatever, race formation, class formation exists. The field itself is temporal and spatial, and the index on it is created by the indices of the sort of action. It's a complete reversal of kind of, all of the other ways to talk about these things. Does that help read it all? I'm going to keep going because this is the thrust at this point, is like that thing. So when we talk about Oedipus is one of these forms, which is here. Oedipus is one of these forms, the index of a reactionary investment. Be thinking, when I said earlier that do be thinking of this like calculus, I'm not joking. Calculus underpins all of what Deleuze is doing here. Like unironically. Not even like as a metaphor, like it's just the thing. So they say Oedipus is one of these forms, an index of a reactionary investment. Oedipus as form, not the content of Oedipus, not the literal structure, and not even the complex, but the form. The form is an index of the way that reactionary libidinal investments of the social field happen and exist. So this is basically the bookend for the last 6 paragraphs, 8 paragraphs, or whatever. Oedipus presupposes paranoiac investment that enslaves desiring production. Oedipus's form shapes how persons can appear to us. If you exist in a space where the only way you have relations with anyone is sister, mom, dad, everyone becomes a relation of those things. The images of the social field are cut up according to this. You create the world. You create the world that you can. Like, this is not wild thinking. It's actually really fantastic to sort of put together, but like, that's the setup. The reactionary libidinal investment of the social field is made in this way. That the whole point is that desiring production is turned into these forms because those are the forms that are taken. It shapes how people appear. It shapes how the flux of desire works, how images work, how the social field operates. When desire takes Oedipal form, this indicates indications, indexicals, and blah, blah, all that shit, right? It's revealing that the libido has reactionarily invested molar social formations. It's if I were to, it's literally, I don't know how else to talk about it except to say that if you're trying to figure out how cars drive around a city, do you sit in a car and drive around the city? No. You figure out the speed cars go, the how many wheels there are, the weight of each car, but you take every single thing as almost a vector or single point of information. It's not, no single point of information is telling you the thing. Ever. But altogether, they form an index that show how the desire pathways of the system are working. That's indexicals, the index of things.
So, like, I guess the reason why my mind went to markers is in terms of thinking, like, how I can use this personally, but I suppose seems like a big part of what Deleuze and Guattari want to do is produce something that is kind of independent of a mind, like, observing it. And so these, like, these markers are not just nominal or something nominalist, but they're actual, like, flows of something that you could identify as going back through, like, a history of, like, where this particular flow of desire and of, like, these cycles of desiring a production,
where investments happened, and how it's in, because again, in investments socially and all of that are more complex than just, oh, I don't like black people. That's not really, like, race is far more complicated than just black skin. There is so much that goes into that, that sort of, and I'm not going to be prescriptive here. I have ideas and thoughts, and I think Klosowski goes into them about how it's not this is not a self-improvement project. It's the opposite, and there is a way that you can be doing this in a different setup. I have lots of opinions on that, but specifically with here, this is not, oh, I'm noticing or I'm seeing or I'm writing down these notes about myself and then I can improve them later. That would, one, require awareness, which if you're just fully satisfied by your reactionary investment, you would just have. So why would you ever notice that? You wouldn't. The ability for us to sort of play into and understand these things is more complex, I think, than that larger setup. And so when we talk about, like, the catalog of figures that sort of comes from these things, and I mean, I know it's the next little bit here that we start talking about, but the catalog of figures that are sort of pre-created for us, that we understand, how do people relate to me in these readings? Or how do I relate to you guys? I don't really know how I relate to you guys. I mostly just talk, and it varies almost every reading. People come in here thinking I'm a teacher. Dad, like, this is a pre-created conditioned category of a relationship that puts you in a specific relationship with me. This is an indice that you could say. You could say that's a pretty big indice. There's a few of those that when you start to see them and you're able to start putting them together, and you start to see that people in aggregate or or over time, or how you can be dealing. Again, this is an analyst and relationship, but there's more than that they're aiming at here. This is kind of what they're talking about. Yes, it's a book about a materialist psychiatry, not psychology, psychiatry specifically.
Out of curiosity, what would be the difference between those terms in this particular context?
I've just had that corrected, so that's a fair question. My understanding is psychology tends to be more focused on the medical bio version of things. Psychiatry tends to be more the inner workings of the psyche. And that's kind of they're not really trying to bridge that gap, but the front page and the translation, it is materialist psychiatry. That's what the books are called.
I see. Makes sense.
In contemporary terms, I think psychiatry is closer to psychopathology rather than normative psychology. Like, they determine what is normal, what is not normal, and what is in between.
Interesting. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that then. That's a thing to think about. But so to continue, because that's, I was already doing the next one as the well-defined figures, well-defined roles, clearly distinct persons, in short, image models of which Lawrence spoke. Mother, fiancé, mistress, wife, saint, whore, princess, maid, rich woman, poor woman, are dependents of Oedipus, even in their reversals and their substitutions. They're derivatives. Derivatives is, I think, a better word for this. Dependances. It's a slightly different setup than dependent. Maybe, but it's fine. The whole point here is that the catalog of figures itself demonstrates how Oedipus produces a typology of women. In this case, the feminine positions. But these are image models. These are templates that code how people appear to you and thus how you love people. Right? They're well defined. They say, like they go through this as well defined, well identified. They're clearly distinct. They have sharp boundaries. We kind of are able to understand the places behind them. They're fixed in a really harsh edged way, pretty much unstable. But they're molar. They're not molecular. This is not desire as a thing. This is whole people, large people. It's the whole thing. And you'll notice the other thing is they start including binaries because there's a lot of exclusive disjunctions. You can't be saint and whore. You can't be princess and maid. You can't be rich woman and poor woman. You can be a mistress and a wife, but that's like doubling up. You can be both, which is its own whole thing. But like the way that these things set up again is through exclusive disjunctions. And even in their reversals and substitutions, Oedipus persists. It still goes through all of these things, switching from, and the Madonna horror complex is like the famous one, but this is hardly like a new thing, or everyone's experienced this in some capacity, where the figures themselves are almost dependents that are produced and subordinate to the structure, but are able to sort of fit up against each other. So that way they're sort of able to be traded in and out as needed, or it's kind of a fucking wild thing. They continue. The very form of these images, their configurations, the whole of their possible relations, are the product of a code or a social axiomatic to which the libido addresses itself through them. And again, this is, I said this is like the thrust of this is the play, the form of the images, the way that they're cut up, segmented, bounded, découpage, I believe is the term in the original that they use, which is great. It means cutting, segmenting, slicing up, and all of that. Configurations is a weird word for that, but découpage. This changes their possible relations as products of either code, which are, again, these overcoded fluxes, or social axiomatic. This is kind of the setup that we're playing with. that these things come from. And decoupage is what I prefer to translate this as, because it's more precise. It is, again, harsh edges. That's the original language that they use is about this slicing and edges. These are not fuzz categories. This is not some fuzzy category shit. This is precision and cutting that produces these bounded persons. They're cutting, and they're cutting from flux by code or axiomatic, as they're sort of outlining here. And those are the things I'm sort of pushing with as I read this. And that's the last bit. The libido addresses itself through them. That, just take a moment and sort of allow that one to sort of wash over you as you think about it. The libido addresses itself through them. So the form of these images, you see the person you're on a date with as an archetype, all the whole of the possible relations. These are the products of code or axiomatic for the Oedipalized. And the libido addresses itself through those codes, through the axiomatics, through cut up images that are there. The images are the medium. They're not the message. This is the thing. It's what's invested is this axiomatic thing. It's not emergent. It's being determined by the social field and your grasp of it and all of your investments in that. And that's why they say persons are simulacra derived from a social aggregate whose code is unconsciously invested for itself. Simulacra for Deleuze is a little bit different than I think a lot of people are more used to. It copies without an original, but it's not intended to be a negative. So don't add that to it when you read this. Don't put that in there. It's not intended to be a negative, like flatly. But they're images without reference, right? Persons aren't real entities. They are effects. They are simulacra produced by social codes and axiomatics, right? Persons are simulacra derived from the social ensemble, aggregate, the social altogether. And the reality of that is that the social is first. The primary thing is first for us. Our world is that of class, race, country, whatever, mode of production, as they go through in chapter 3. People are extracted from this, abstracted from this, and simulated from that. And the libido is investing the code of the social aggregate for itself, not for an external purpose. And Marcellus, this is going to go back to your question earlier about the disinterested love. Libido isn't doing this for itself. Libido doesn't have a goal. Desire doesn't have a goal. This investment is direct. It is immediate and not mediated by persons. Persons are the effect of this, but this is, again, the social aggregate for itself, whose code is unconsciously invested for itself, pour lui-même, for very much its own enjoyment, its own purpose. It's love and love's sake. And so this is why if we have someone we're interested in who's a lower class person, that doesn't make this desire revolutionary. Zizek actually probably has, of all the people I'm going to bring up during this, I think he has one of the best takes of Titanic, for example, the film Titanic. That Titanic isn't about the revolutionary power of love, which is how people take it, but instead how the wealthy need to feed off the energy of the working class. And that's what literally Rose does in it. Far more interesting and, I would argue, accurate reading of it, because the lower class interest doesn't make you revolutionary. If the code or axiomatic that governs class relations is invested in a reactionary way, maintaining the class structure. Then the Jack versus Rose, whatever it is, that the person is made, the maid becoming maid, is a simulacrum of that reactionary investment. They're produced by that, from that position. Is that making sense to everyone?
So if we invest in these axiomatic, like social axiomatic, in which like libido addresses itself, right? And these kind of social, and we're talking about in molar aggregate. We're talking about like we don't want to repeat like the molar and molar and molecular, right? But we're talking about big kind of aggregate, right? These codes are the sometimes they are reactionary, kind of like they put us in a setup where there is a reactionary kind of like mode that we operate in, right? Like, so it keeps us detached, or these indices, right? These indices are reactionary, kind of like, that's what I understand from you, that these axiomatics, right, are what kind of like crushing desire. Like you can say that Oedipus is also an axiomatic, right? Right?
Say that one more time for me.
You can say that Oedipus, the Oedipus complex, as a familiar relation, as a representation, and as an axiomatic.
It is
code, right?
Works a little bit differently than that. It works a little bit differently than that. I would say a little bit different. But you're close. Yeah. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say close, and it's close enough for government work, I think, is the line. Yeah, I probably wouldn't say it exactly like that, but I don't think that's a wrong way to put it either. That would actually be a thing to look into. All right, I'll make a note.
And by the way, the simulacra, right? I witnessed this language, like especially this sentence, right? The simulacra, the persons are the simulacra derived from social aggregate. The simulacra is he mentioned Plato. Deleuze in different repetition mentioned the simulacra, but he mentioned it passively, right? Where you have the clayman, the clayman, the thing that is like, not the genus and the species. Like we enter into kind of like, I don't want to prolong, but in different repetition, he represents difference as its simulacra in itself, right? This kind of like what kind of move different persons, right, to this kind of code, right, to this kind of investment of the code itself, right? Even and my question is a simple question, right? Does social axiomatic produce this difference or the simulacra, right? Does it produce this kind of own problem and solution, or I am kind of going to
so you're outside of today's reading, but I won't be able to answer you fully today because I'm not mentally able in there. But hit me up in a day or two. I'm hoping I feel better this week, and that's actually a very important discussion around this. So I just can't answer it right now because I'll fuck it up. Does that make sense? Sorry, I'd love to, trust me, but no.
Yeah.
I do. I want to keep reading though. All right. That is why love and desire exhibit reactionary or else revolutionary indices. The latter emerge, on the contrary, as non-figurative indices where persons give way to decoded flux of desire, to lines of vibration, and where the cross-sections of images give way to schizzes that constitute singular points, point signs with several dimensions causing flux to circulate rather than canceling them. If you can't hear, my voice is getting hoarse. This may be the last paragraph of the day. So we've got two kinds of indices that they're kind of talking through in this. There's a lot in this sentence. It's a big fuck sentence. I hate when this happens. But you have on the one side reactionary indices, right? These are figurative. My voice is becoming hoarse. Exactly. You have persons as bounded images. Remember, with the sharp edges of things. Cross sections and cuts that stop the flux, that stop flux. They're edges of that. They're filled with exclusive disjunctions. They cancel flux, I think is the phrasing that they actually use it at some point. Like they cancel that. On the other side, you have revolutionary indices, which are non-figurative. These are not organized and representational images and figures at all. It doesn't represent a pre-existing form. Revolutionary indices are, they say, persons give way to the decoded flux of desire. It's the distortion of like the way that like this person form becomes flux. It's not really like an undifferentiated space. It's more like the molecular flux of things, the lines of vibration, right? Like Lawrence wrote about this. They made this reference a few times. It's not stable as a form, but it's an intensity of an increasing intensity of vibration, the resonances and frequencies. The setup that they're playing with is sort of describing these two and contrasting them. And it's very important that they're contrasting them. Very important that they're contrasting them. Because of the next paragraph, but I'm kind of moving ahead. They go on to say, the non-figurative loves. These are the indices of revolutionary investment of the social field, which are neither Oedipal nor pre-Oedipal, since all it amounts to the same thing, but innocently an-Oedipal, which give the revolutionary the right to say Oedipus, never heard of it. Non-figurative love is basically the revolutionary indice. It's not Oedipal, it's not pre-Oedipal, it is an-Oedipal. It is outside, an-Oedipal, in that sense. It's not atheism, which means no God, it's an-theism. It's a different setup. It's not anti-Oedipus, really, despite hilariously that being the name. It's not pre-Oedipal, which would deal with sort of the presumed prehistory of Oedipus. And the phrase innocently, which is a direct translation, really important. Innocently means not intellectualized, not cynical, not achieved through struggle or liberation. It is innocent. It has never fallen. It has never been co-opted. It's never guilty. It's never burdened. That's the phrase, innocently, that I attach to a lot here. The schizophrenic process itself is about recovering innocence. That's what they see it as. Yeah, it's a Greek root for outside of, Anna. It means outside. Again, it's not, it doesn't even give a shit about Oedipus. Like an-Oedipal means entirely without it, outside of that realm. It's not in contrast to or anti or pre. Doesn't even figure in. Doesn't even figure into the entire thing. And that's the revolutionary utterance where they say, it's not repression. Repression would be like, I don't want to talk about Oedipus. But ignorance of it. Beautiful ignorance. The bliss of ignorance. The absence of a relation to Oedipus. Oedipus? Never heard of him. It's more of a never heard of him is actually the original joke. That's why it's kind of funny. Oedipus? Don't even know the guy. It's kind of the original joke that they've got there. Ish. And that's the thrust of this. And they end, for there is indeed a sexual revolution. Is so good. Before they say that, undoing the form of persons in the ego, not on behalf of a pre-Oedipal undifferentiated, but on behalf of an-Oedipal lines of singularities, the desiring machines. the two false paths they lay out here, that of person form and ego form, right? The pre-Oedipal undifferentiated, this is that person form, the fusion with the mother, pre-Oedipalized. Oedipal has to do with the father. This is psychoanalytic gibberish nonsense 101, but it's the only way to get through this, to just deal with it. The pre-Oedipal undifferentiated is the imaginary, the narcissistic state. It's still in the space of the Oedipal trajectory, but you've just fused with the mother, which puts you in the undifferentiated ocean of symbols, right? For them, they're saying, no, it's an-Oedipal lines of singularities instead. It's desiring machines. It's not the other false path, the Oedipalized differentiation, which is the construction of the ego, the bounded subject, the structured person, properly Oedipalized. No. It's singularities, not persons. Lines, not points. There are no points. It's vectors, not single elements. Desiring machines, not organisms. It's productive and connective and always in process. It is not about regressing to an undifferentiated fusion of all of these symbols. No, it's progression to a multiplicity of difference, one of molecular, machinic, and intensive elements with many singularities, not an undifferentiated mass, a unified person at large that just is filled with different things. And that's why they end with that last line is, for there is indeed a sexual revolution which does not concern objects, aims, or sources, but only machinic forms or indices. Sexual revolution exists. We fucked it up, is basically what they're saying here. Like they're saying this contemporaneously with the sexual revolution, which was, late 60s, big thing. They're like, no. Objects, we're fucking it up. There's people with particular genders and sexes that we're really caring about. There are aims with some sort of perversity of polymorphism that exist here. There's sources where we liberate bodily zones or areas from their repression. And it's like, that's great. All of that is focused on the things that specifically they've been laying out here. Objects, aims, sources. There's gay liberation, women's liberation, sexual liberation, liberation from monogamy, all of these things. But it doesn't matter if they maintain an Oedipal form. That's their argument. If it's still Oedipalized, it doesn't matter. And I've made this argument quite a bit, but I agree a lot. I agree a lot with this, extremely. It's, if we're staying in that space and we're staying in those structures, we end up in a place where, and I've brought it up before and I will continue to bring it up because it's the best example of this, when we were fighting for gay marriage to be legalized. And it was weird, mid 2000s to late 2000s. The gay rights movement shifted from where it was in the early 2000s. That was kind of all inclusive. Like it was this huge, like, pride parades were very different than they became. And what they became is fucking Oedipalized. The argument became, no, we should be able to get gay married because we, like you, I'm the man, that's the woman. I'm that. And we will Oedipalize our children just perfectly fine. Why would we do anything else? We won't make our children become weirdos. My God, why would you ever want children to be raised by weirdos who love them, but they're weirdos? No, we're not weirdos. We're just like you, but that's the thing. It ends up staying Oedipalized. And so now you have
the reason why I love the craft, right? Where, they're like, oh, watch out for those weirdos. And they're like, we are the weirdos, mister. But pride used to be so absolutely different that it's like unimaginable to what it is now. Like just complete like the stuff that used to go on, and that now you can somewhat see here or there, but it's like nothing like what it was like when they first started off in the late '60s and the early '70s. Nothing. There's like no comparison whatsoever. And it is this like politics of respectability too, of this like what we want is we are different, but what we want to do is to assimilate, right? And and that's why you get figures of like the cis white, like the figure of the cis white gay man that's like,
Yep.
always selling out like trans people, etc.
Oh yeah, I have to chime in on this. I have to. I'm sorry. Like you see these older British cis white gay men talking about, oh, we already have equality in marriage, and then we already conquered AIDS, so we need to get rid of those abnormal people like the trans. That's what's happening right now. I mean, it's kind of wild.
No, it's
logic, but
it was weird to watch because I wasn't like hyper active in any of the scenes when I first moved to San Francisco. It was mid 2000s, and the shift in Pride was so marked in just like 8 years. And it was like 8 years. I'd go to Pride every year because it's fucking blast. And also, I lived on Folsom Street. If you don't know the history of Folsom Street, before Twitter ruined it, and it became sort of this, it was the leather district, and it was like Hell's Angels had a spot there, and every year they would have the Folsom Street Fair, and it was amazing because it was like every kink that existed in the world would show up. And when I first started living there, the gulf between Pride and Folsom Street wasn't like the people would tend to be at both, but then it sort of separated, especially as in San Francisco, there was more money and it became more poshy of an event and it became more higher end of an event. And they started being like, well, we can't allow those people to be here. We're going to have, that's not allowed. This booth is no longer allowed. And slowly it actually pushed the marginalized into the Folsom Street Fair. And the Folsom Street Fair itself became like, I don't want to say like worse because that's not really what I mean, but it was a very friendly event for a very long time. And then it became hypersexualized. Like it was always very sexualized, but like it became pointed. And it shifted what that meant because it meant these are the people, this is where we're doing this. And now it's a reaction to that. And it became aggressive in its own way. And so you have these really weird ways on both sides. Again, counter-Oedipal or Oedipal, you're still doing the fucking thing. You are rebuilding that structure in your actions and in what you do. That's the whole point of this, is understanding that all of this is there. All of this is that. There is a sexual revolution. It's not the one you're thinking of, though. It's not the one you're thinking of. And it's that next level down. It's shifting where we think of this and how we consider this, and instead looking at actual liberation, which is about getting rid of the forms of Oedipalization and instead understanding machinic forms that are emergent. It's about enabling emergence, short version. My throat is going and I'm going to fade here really fast. That is the end of this paragraph. We will make our way to the fourth and final thesis of schizoanalysis, which is going to get us even closer to the end of the book. Leather daddies against Oedipalization. I think exactly kind of my point, Shake, because it was, it's a trip. Folsom Street Fair was a trip, but it became very different. And so did Pride in San Francisco. Pride in San Francisco is almost unrecognizable, to be frank. I couldn't believe the last time I went. It was like a fair. It was weird. You didn't even notice really Pride as part of it. I know my standards have changed, but also like it just is very, things have changed. But it's a great, I think, example of how this happens. It's a great example of how it happens. But with that, I'm going to make my way to get some honey in my tea, a little bit of lemon, relax my throat a little bit because my voice box is going to start going very soon here. How does it go? This is how sick I am. If you appreciate what I do, please do contribute to the project. QC does always need some level of support. Super chats are always fun, but better. Patreon.com/DGQC. Drop a cup of coffee every single month. $5 a month, $10 a month makes a massive world of difference to what we're doing here. You can always join all of our readings live, of course, and the best way to contribute is just by joining us at Discord, discord.gg/DGQC. If you want to learn about any of these things and discuss them and get deeper into them, because we are, and we're having a blast with it. We have lots of amazing readings every single week. But with that, I'm going to go. My voice is going to start giving. I appreciate all of this. Let me see. Is there anyone live that I could even imagine sending you to? Usually there's not. Well, that's boring. Is there anyone? Trump is giving Charlie Kirk his award right now. Israel's releasing hostages. None of that. Nope. There is fucking no one. Is anyone live right now? What the fuck? Anyone, give me someone who's live. Anyone. Otherwise, I'm just going to say fuck it. All right. That's going to be it then. We got nothing. So I'm just going to be ending the stream. And I guess I will see you all soon enough.
Thanks, Brooks.
You guys enjoy.